All right. So I guess since I'm grab the mic first, I'll just start by asking everybody to introduce themselves.
My name is Joe Mayo, and I am a Bitcoin miner in Wyoming. I moved here a couple of years specifically because Wyoming was such a favorable place to mine Bitcoin.
Is this thing on?
Yeah, it should be.
Well, my name's Cody Harris. I'm originally from Wyoming. I grew up in Star Valley, and I left for 10 years, was in Utah. Started mining Bitcoin 3 winters ago, and I've been heating my houses with it since. Last year, I moved back to Wyoming, built a house from the ground up to be heated with Bitcoin, and now I'm working on heating other people's homes in Fremont County with Bitcoin miners. So,
Jamie Terranova, 44 West Mining, operating up in Gillette. We came to Wyoming because our group consists of 3 guys from New York, 2 from Texas, and 1 from Colorado. So naturally, we ended up in the northeast corner of Wyoming. So that's how we got there. But it's been a great experience so far.
Well, and I'm Colin Crossman. Also, we operate our facility in Gillette, different grid, which is interesting. We can maybe get into some of that. We moved to Wyoming during COVID because why not? And we came here not to mine, actually, but because of all the other laws that Wyoming had. But it turned out that mining in Wyoming is actually a great place. And for us, we were talking a little bit earlier, one of that is because of the climate. Unlike, say, Texas, you don't have high temperatures. You don't have a lot of humidity. We don't have, ERCOT either. But there's lots of different scales here. We have some home mining. We have large scale for Wyoming, small scale for Wyoming. And why don't you talk about what you do?
I'd say I'm starting with home. I'm kind of where Cody's going. So I'm going to build out a house that's dedicated to be heated with Bitcoin. So I guess I'll mention this. So last winter, obviously we know Wyoming's a nice cold place. I think on average over the winter, I made $500 heating my house, which, where else can you say that? I look at my neighbors who are spending thousands and thousands of dollars for the same electricity. Hey, take the Bitcoin cash back.
I'll take a little bit here while we're on the home heating front. So these bigger miners, like big and medium, I guess, respectively, these guys have different advantages for sure. It's hard for us to come by as small miners. Like, I don't have the economies of scale to go in and purchase miners, 1,000 miners at a time, and get a good deal on these things. The only real advantage you have as a home miner is that you are using that heat. So, it does give us an edge and allow us to compete with these guys right now and be able to heat in Wyoming and heat your home. And we have a lot of great spots. I won't say it's the best in Wyoming. We shockingly do not have cheap power here for residential. It's like, I don't know why it's so high, but it's not great. But there are spots like where I'm from in Star Valley, power is 6 cents a kilowatt hour. You will get paid thousands of dollars every winter to heat your house in Star Valley. And winter is long in Star Valley. So yeah, just leaning on some of these like smaller things that we have. And unfortunately, I will say also that heating homes in Wyoming sounds like this dreamy idea, like, oh, we're all going to be heating our homes with Bitcoin. It's not going to be this way. You're competing against natural gas as a heat source, and natural gas is every city has a centralized most have centralized natural gas, and it's just too cheap. Even with Bitcoin mining, it's not going to be affordable. It's not going to save you any money. But if you're living in a rural area where your only options are propane or electric, it's likely that heating your house with Bitcoin will save you money. So that's, we can take questions. Sure.
We're used to like 13 cents and
Yeah. So most of I think someone mentioned in one of the talks that most of the state is on Rocky Mountain Power, which is, I'm not thrilled with Rocky Mountain Power, but that's what we have. That's what I was on in Utah. And I was like, I'm still on this in Wyoming. Like, I came up here for freedom. Where's my cheap power?
Yeah, I think even the small rural electric co-ops buy them from Rocky Mountain anywhere. Well, Mountain West Power, whoever does it.
Whoever, Lower Valley Power and Light is who's doing Star Valley, and the adjacent valleys, Teton Valley in Idaho, I think are all on that same power supplier, and it's just cheaper up there. I don't know what the deal is, but yeah.
I think on an industrial scale, there are opportunities to repurpose heat for uses like greenhouses and breweries or other fish hatcheries, other businesses that require a constant flow of heat, which you might not always have, particularly in the winter months here. So repurposing that waste product, which could otherwise go into the air and be useless to you, there's an opportunity to turn that into many types of applications, which can be ancillary revenue streams. So I think that's something you're going to see more and more in the mining world in general, and particularly in Wyoming, where everything's wide open. Land is generally not a problem. There's room for industrial-sized greenhouses to attach to, and it doesn't take much. A megawatt worth of mining builds a 3-acre greenhouse. So if you imagine that at scale, you could really build a facility that can produce a lot of food. So, not to mention cannabis when the time is when it's appropriate to do that, but we're not there yet. So I think that's what you're going to see more and more of going forward. Just the whole keeping everything in a cycle where you're not wasting any part of the process.
So in the heat reuse element, my wife and I have heated our house with Bitcoin miners. We used S9s for a couple winters, and it was great. But in our facility, we at the moment we have a warehouse facility and we have neighbors. So during the winter, we just pipe the heat to our neighbors, so they save some money on their heating bills and they don't complain about our noise. So works out pretty well. But what are some of the challenges other than price? What are some of the challenges that that people have experienced mining here in Wyoming? I know that's going to be very different between the home miners and the industrial miners, but maybe there's some areas of equivalency here.
Internet can always be sketchy. You definitely. I ended up going with Starlink just so I had internet to mine with.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. Our internet is broadband over there, so it's just comes in on a dish, and it's most of the time it's good, but oftentimes we do have problems. So luckily we found ways around this where the miners will still hash when the internet. We have ways of tricking them into hashing when there is no internet. So people aren't going to be just panicking, power's on, internet's out, I got no heat in my house. So there are ways around it, but when you're hashing and not sending it to a pool, or not actually participating in actual mining, you're not making any money either. So
I guess it's a good point. We should note that with a Bitcoin miner, you need internet to actually do the hashing, and they turn off if the internet goes off. So in the middle of winter, if you lose internet, then your miner goes off, which can't be bad.
It's just running the table in rural settings. Where's even start?
Why am I not on Starlink? That's a good question. I haven't actually looked into it. I mean, the broadband seems to work okay. I'm sure it's cheaper than Starlink. And Starlink does have latency issues, which isn't a huge problem for Bitcoin mining, but it is nicer to be just a little bit faster on sitting back and forth to the pool. So
Starlink's more expensive.
But go ahead.
Well, one of the things about Starlink is more expensive, and if you're if I'm understanding correctly, you're in a lot of different sites, so Bitcoin miners do not use a lot of data. Okay, so yeah, my entire facility, which has several hundred miners, uses less than 12 megabit. So you could run it off of a cell phone. The problem is you need reliable connection. Correct. And so if you're at a lot of sites where you'd have to get a Starlink dish for each one, that probably would be uneconomical. But for someone like me, Starlink, I'm not using Starlink right now. We use microwave backhaul, but because cable isn't available where I am. But for Starlink would be a great option for me, and probably for Jamie over there. But it's not necessarily great if you have a lot of distributed sites.
For what it's worth, I happen to have bought a Starlink, so I paid $100 price. But they did just come out with where it's kind of where that price, half of that price sold it. Yeah, what recently now has just been.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, just to be clear, we are using broadband, and it's worked pretty well. I mean, we've had some intermittent outages, but nothing too terrible. But Starlink is something we looked into and may consider going forward if the internet doesn't perform. So in terms of other challenges, I would say depending on the type of mining you're doing, if you're doing an air-cooled design and you're out in an open field, you can be susceptible to dust storms and blowing snowstorms and all the operational challenges that stuff will find its way into any opening in a modular setup, which is one of the reasons why we chose to go immersion, because we wanted a closed system that was sort of impermeable to those factors. One other a little more nuanced issue Getting certain types of equipment to Wyoming, it could be a little bit of a challenge. Our first build, we brought in equipment from Amsterdam, and you should have seen the route it had to take to get from Amsterdam to Gillette, Wyoming, and the time it took. So that is highly specialized equipment. You may run into excess shipping costs and delays, and that can be a little bit of an issue if not planned for correctly.
All right, what are the you solved this by going immersion, but one of the air-cooled issues, in addition to dust storms and potentially snow, like snowdrift, is the fact that our elevation, the lowest parts of Wyoming are over 3,000 feet. I think they're actually over 4,000 feet. Cheyenne is at 6,500. I think we're at, 7,200, 7,300 here. You have to actually understand that's 20% less atmosphere, so you have to move 20% more air if you're air-cooled. That's a big deal. My facility is 100% air cooled, and so when we designed it, we had to design the outflow and the inflow to actually accommodate that extra airflow that you need at the altitude. So
just to add to that, the transformer capacity is significantly reduced the higher you go. So again, we're at 4,500 feet. It wasn't an issue for us, but an extra 2,000 feet, that is something you would need to take into account when you're planning.
Did not know that the transformer changed it.
I had another drawback, cottonwood seats. They will definitely clog up your Bitcoin miner if you do not have a nice filter there.
Yeah, I'll tell you, we've received customer equipment from, say, Texas, and when we get them, we clean them out, and when we send them away, we clean them out. But when we're getting them, we're cleaning out like birds, and we're sending them, we're cleaning out cottonwood seeds.
I was going to ask you two specifically, why Wyoming? Like, I mean, for me, it's easy. It's cold temps. It's for house heating. It's like maybe the best state in the country. But why wouldn't you guys just go to ERCOT? Why not go somewhere else? It doesn't seem like it's funny that Wyoming has so much energy, but it doesn't seem readily accessible. So why did you guys end up in Wyoming?
Yeah, I mean, our sort of top-down approach was we wanted to be somewhere that we were politically covered, and Senator Lummis and others have been extremely vocal about wanting to bring the business into the state. So that was where it started. Then we went to geographical climate, which I think Wyoming has a big advantage over Texas in that respect. No natural disasters, and the fairly temperate climate. Obviously, there can be some extremes. And then availability, abundance of power, and there's very few places in the country where you're going to find availability and abundance like you do here. And then of course price, and the price was, pre-halving and back in 2021 when mining economics were a little different. That's changed a bit, but those were the factors that sort of brought us in. And then the final piece of it for the specific site placement in Gillette was the availability of labor and industry nearby to our site. And that was important and able to be able to construct the site effectively.
Also, a lot of similarities with us. One of the aspects he mentioned was, Texas has natural disasters. Another thing Texas has that Wyoming doesn't have is humidity. Humidity destroys over time your aluminum heat sinks. You don't hear about that much, but it will, especially if you're at the coastal areas, it will rot your aluminum. We don't have that problem. We have dust. We have other problems, but not that. Other issues that brought us to Wyoming are, the political aspects, but also the ability for us to become a big player very quickly. So we're not a large miner. I mean, you got Riot here. I mean, they're at 400, 500 megawatts. We're smaller than these guys, but we're still a very big player. And I guess another aspect that's pretty nice is there's not a lot of competition, and I don't mean that in the sense of other businesses, other industries. We talked a lot this morning about high performance computing and AI coming in and out competing for price Bitcoin miners, and that's happening in Cheyenne. You have CleanSpark coming in. CleanSpark's great, and they got a contract that they're going to be able to work. But if they hadn't come in the way they did, the Facebook down there is sucking up all the power for $200 a megawatt. They can pay and will pay 10 times what Bitcoin miners can pay. Well, they're not going to locate an AI data center anywhere in Wyoming except for maybe Cheyenne, maybe Casper. And it's not because of power availability. It's not because of it's because of ancillary services. And I don't mean ancillary power services. I mean hospitals. I mean infrastructure. I mean employees.
Fire department.
Fire department. If you're running a tier 3 or tier 4 data center, you can't have downtime. And we're talking minutes of downtime will get you sued by your customers. So they can't afford the actual business risk of locating away from a sizable municipality. And I'll call Cheyenne a sizable municipality, okay? But if they're out, say in Goshen County or Riverton area, they're not going to be able to actually support the kind of data center that could compete with a Bitcoin miner. But if you go down, if you try to go down into an area where an AI data center can come in, they'll just outbid you, and Bitcoin miners won't be able to compete. So Wyoming has somewhat of a inbuilt defense against
Buffer.
Against that. So. All right. How about but this is working pretty well. How about we can just go back to questions? I can.
Well, I got one for you. So you talked about that same point. Now, Bitcoin miners are the most flexible load around, and Wyoming appears to me, I know personally, have a lot of stranded energy. It's really hard to use that energy, but I'm looking at all the stranded energy in Wyoming and go, Bitcoin miners are the only people who will go there. And then they could purchase that energy for a really low price and allow the municipality or whoever owns it to then build the infrastructure back to the grid and price ourselves out, and we'll just go move on to the next stranded energy source. So I think that could be actually a big factor of bringing development to Wyoming and bring the infrastructure that we don't have here. Any thoughts on that?
Well,
Yeah, in terms of energy infrastructure in Campbell County, specifically Gillette, it's there. It's there. There's energy being produced that's getting sent out of state, and this goes back to a policy discussion earlier, which some of you may have seen, but finding a way to come up with a structure that right sizes the utilities needs and incentivizes investment in the industry is the goal, and it's been a very challenging goal, but it does remain the goal. We have to recognize this is something where, from our perspective, we all want to grow. And in order to do that, we're going to need the support of the utilities and the politicians that on top of them to be able to do that. And from the utilities perspective, they obviously want to sell as much power as possible. I could just quickly speak on, from our experience, the way we manage our operations, we're trying to avoid coincident peaks, and that requires self-curtailment, downtime. We're paying the utility probably 20 to 30% less than we want to. We're not always down at the correct times when they need us to be. Sometimes we're running when they don't want us to be, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So the goal is to get into more of that interruptible structure where they can signal to us when they need the power. We turn off up to a certain tolerance, and we're financially incentivized to do it. It's a situation that makes sense for everybody.
Well, as you mentioned, shipping the power out of state, one of the problems with doing that for the state of Wyoming and for the citizens of Wyoming is that means that our local industries, our coal miners, our power plants, our oil producers are beholden to those out-of-state interests. If they say, we don't want to buy your coal power, well, we shut it down. If we don't have a local buyer who is willing to take it off at price, then they can just dictate our energy policy for us. We don't want that. So if we have enough Bitcoin miners here, we don't have a lot of population here. We're not going to, we produce so much energy, we can't use it here. We have to either figure out a way to use it here, like a Bitcoin mine, so that we can have local producers, so we can tell those interests to stuff it if they say shut down your coal plant or shut down your oil fields, or build more wind power where we have grassland. If we have the consumer here that can take all of that power that they're threatening to deny us, great. If we don't, then we get told what we have to do, and I don't like that. I hope you guys don't like that either.
I wanted to mention one thing too, actually. I mean, made me think about this. You're talking about curtailing and working with the power grid and all this. It's not necessarily out of grasp for even small people like myself mining at home. I'm right now on a waiting list to get on Rocky Mountain Power's time of day program. So even residential customers can work with the power company and be incentivized to use power at different times. I'm going to be probably saving 40% in electricity this year, which will make heating my house even more profitable, just by turning off during certain times of the day. And luckily, like at least where I'm at, the program works out really nicely. Like it wouldn't work out if you lived in town and you heated with natural gas, but if you're heating with electric all night long, they're trying to incentivize me to use power all night long, and that's my highest heating load. So, you know, it's interesting that at almost all levels you can sort of work with your grid or work with your power supplier on this, even if it's not these big giant, you know, contracts. You can still kind of, you know, find some sneaky ways to get in there and save some money and help them balance things out. So,
yeah, we've touched on it, but one of the things that Jamie mentioned is the ability to do curtailment. But with the right software and with the right technology, you can curtail the whole mine. You can control part of the mine. If you're on 3-phase power and you know which machines are on which leg, you could curtail leg 1 and not leg 2. If they ask you, like, we need you to balance that leg for us, we can do that. We have a lot of facility that Texas is starting to think about, but because Wyoming is a small community, if we can get the education there to the utilities that we can actually help you with this stuff, I don't know if they need it yet, but maybe they do. We can do it for them, and we can do it at a scale that makes sense for everybody and actually become a benchmark that other states, like the bigger states, can then model after.
Yeah, I think maybe you should also talk a little bit about why the power companies like us, because again, we're flexible. We can't shut off. Think about any other big factory. When they're running a steel factory or something like that, you can't just shut off because people are using too much power. It takes a long time to ramp up or ramp down. And I know from working with the utilities, one of the reasons they like Bitcoin miners is it allows them to run their power plants at full capacity. So power plants are much more efficient if you just run them at 100% capacity and don't try to throttle them up and down to match the load. If you have a dispatchable load, you can just have us turn off and on, and it's faster, cheaper, and better for everybody.
Yeah, and just to double down on those comments, it's got to be sold as an asset to the utility. The ability for them to be able to signal us and us to be 100% off, 60% off, 20% off within literally minutes is an asset to them and their grid balancing responsibilities.
So an analogy I like, you've heard of peaker plants. These are very fast-moving gas-fired turbines that they can turn them on. I mean, maybe it's not that fast, but they turn them on. They can hit the high power cost and dump power into the grid and then turn off, and they're very quick. Bitcoin mining is like the anti-peaker plant. We're an anti-generator. And what I mean is we can suck up excess power at a moment's notice, and we can basically become a negative generator and come on as hard as we want, as hard as they need us, and for as long as that, and then turn off on a moment's notice. Probably even faster than a peaker plant, almost like an anti-battery, where if they have a steady load that they want, and all of a sudden, for some reason, maybe there's a storm event and part of the grid gets knocked out, but the Bitcoin miner is sitting there and they say, hey, we need you to take up as much power as you can so that we don't have to ramp the plant down while we fix this line, and then we'll fix it and then you turn back off. We can do that. Assuming we have miners that are already that are idle. Maybe we don't have those, but similarly in Texas, you saw this a couple of years ago. They had the problem where the gas lines froze and they had massive outages. Last winter, same sort of weather events, but because Riot was there and Riot was able to dump all that power, all that 400 megawatt hours back into the grid, they didn't have the same problem.
I guess I'll mention too that peaker plants are just vastly less efficient than a baseload plant. So if peaker plants are more expensive to build, much more expensive to operate, which translates to a higher price for consumers. So if you're a consumer on a grid, you would rather have Bitcoin miners as a dispatchable load than have your utility built peaker plants. You're just going to have a cheaper rate.
Yeah.
I kind of want to maybe see if you guys want to take this question up a little bit, but like right now, I feel like it's a good time to enter into this space. If you're interested in Bitcoin mining, I got in the last peak fervor time, and we were buying M30Ss for $10,000. They're worth like $200.
I did that too.
So if you believe in Bitcoin and you think you has a shot at doing anything, now is probably the time. Don't wait 6 months or a year for everyone to be talking about it. And now, because Bitcoin miners will be up. I would say if you're interested in this, there's no time like the present to jump in. I'm just curious what you guys think about current market. Like, miner prices, like ASIC prices, just the whole thing. Probably.
Well, maybe we should ask these guys. Does anybody here actually have run a miner before? Anybody in the audience?
All right.
Okay, I was surprised. Okay, that's more than I thought.
What do you guys think about 860 terahash and then, the cycling those in it?
Well, we can talk about Bitmain. I don't buy Bitmain's first flush ever.
Good plan.
Yeah, I'll certainly consider buying used Bitmain. I have Bitmain in my facility. I'm a WhatsMiner maxi though. There's reasons for that. Bitmain machines are awesome, but I explain the difference. It's like, do you want, a Ford F-150 or a Porsche? If you're gonna go out, on your ranch, you're not driving your Porsche. Yeah, the Porsche is great on the highway. You hit a pothole, not great. So the WhatsMiners, they do not care. They will just go, then go, and go. You can throw dust at them. You can freeze them. I have the WhatsMiners are based off the S9 platform. The Antminers took the S9 platform and kind of squirreled it a little bit. I have pictures of S9s running caked in snow, just they don't care. And so yeah, Antminers are awesome. They're very efficient. They squeeze out the last terahash, but they have you got to baby them. But as to whether or not people should be getting into mining, yeah, any time is a good time to get into mining, as long as you have a way of making sure you can cover the cost and you are willing to ride it out. Just like buying Bitcoin. Don't buy Bitcoin and expect to make money next week. Don't buy a miner and expect to make money next week. You got to hold on to it, and you will make money when you hit the peak. When everyone else wants to buy a miner and you're in, that's when you'll make the money. But if you dump your miner and then the peak hits, well.
Can I follow up on that a little bit? So I helped a guy who had electric heat, and he wanted to heat his horse barn, and I said, hey, why don't you use a Bitcoin miner? You basically get cash back. The whole summer, he was effectively losing money. I'm losing money. In the fall, he's like, I made 200% the whole summer. You just never know till the price volatility hits. That's when you adjust your profits or losses.
I think the framing that's helped me through my years of mining is I wouldn't get into mining unless I can look around at like this table, for instance, or everybody else in this room and sort of size them up and think, what is my competitive advantage? Like this is an industry where there are a lot of different competitive advantages, whether it be curtailing or just finding some cheap power somewhere or heating your house. But like, if you can't bring your price down to where you think the big dogs are at, like where you think Riot is at, you probably shouldn't be doing this. Be careful. Don't jump in at kind of like a medium number and think it's going to be okay. Because in 2021, it was more than okay. And then it got very bad very quick. And it's just,
Forest fire that's burning through now burns through.
Anybody who's not in a really strong position is going to get, going to be in trouble. So that'd be my advice.
I guess we should say the hash price is like absolutely in the toilet right now.
Yeah, it's bad.
It's like the worst ever.
Yeah, everybody's bleeding right now. It hurts.
Just back on the ASIC discussion, which I think you alluded to, we saw a little overproduction over the past 6-12 months with various new generations of machines coming out. There's more on the horizon. One that you referenced. I saw recently a 5 joules per terahash machine projected for early 2025. So, I mean, all of these things, and it's continuing. That the pace of production is continuing. All these things are going to seriously. It's going to cause a lot of pressure on the price of ASICs that are specifically the ones that are out there, the new gens or the mid gens that haven't really sold that well. So, my personal feeling on that is that we have a little bit more to work through. I get the sense that there's not a lot moving out there, and if you're contemplating an upgrade anytime soon, I think you have a little bit of time to wait to do that.
Yeah, and I guess I was a little flippant earlier, but basically, as Cody said here, if you have a competitive advantage, you will be able to make it work. If the heat is the byproduct, if you can use that heat to benefit you, then by all means, you are already better than Riot, even though they have sweetheart contracts and access to capital markets that you don't have. Don't buy, if you're going to heat your house, don't buy the state-of-the-art machine. Well, first of all, if it breaks, you're out. So you don't want to buy one. You want to buy 3 or 5, so that if 2 of them go down, you have 2 to replace them with. And by doing that, you can buy 2 gen old things for $200 instead of $10,000. And since your cost, if you're comparing it with electric heat that you're already paying, if you're paying 10 cents for the electric heat, you're paying 10 cents for the ASIC heat, but you're getting paid back. So you don't care. The electrical cost is a wash to you. And on top of that, we could get into pools if you guys want to. Yeah. Well, so there's so many things you can do. Like you could, if you need the income to be very consistent, there's pools for you. If you're okay with having inconsistent payouts that are both better for the ecosystem and better for your morality, you can go with Ocean. Obviously, I'm on with Ocean. So does he. But other things that you can do that give you a competitive advantage. For instance, let's say you have a stack of KYC Bitcoin. You can sell your KYC Bitcoin, and your miners are producing KYC free Bitcoin. So you don't even have to necessarily, if you're mining at parity, you don't even have to necessarily spend your virgin mined Bitcoin to cover your miner. Spend your KYC Bitcoin and keep the mined Bitcoin, and you can rotate. And because there's actually, if you look at BISC, you look at other things, there's generally speaking a premium to buy KYC free Bitcoin. So you actually are technically running a spread there too.
I got an interesting thing I've been thinking about. I want to run it by you guys. What industries in Wyoming do you think could utilize Bitcoin's waste heat effectively that aren't? I know ones that come to me was lumber drying. I know we got a huge timber industry here. You can't buy heated treated wood here. I'm looking at I'm like, hey, you want to set up, run the heat right through, dry the wood, charge the lumber company for it. It's probably way cheaper than them.
Yeah, greenhouses would be an obvious one. Breweries is more of a passion project, but there's constant heat need there. Fish hatcheries, another one that comes to mind for fish farming. Any business that requires a constant 80 degrees year round, which ambiently cannot be provided, that would be a good partner for a Bitcoin project.
I was actually thinking about heating swimming pools for a lot of the schools and stuff, or just taking a bath on electric heat for their pools.
Well, not just swimming pools. If you can get the power to the location, stock ponds. You've got these little bits of water all over the place that need to be liquid. You're going to heat those anyway. If you do heat them with a Bitcoin miner instead, you can with low LoRa style radio, you can have your actual internet connection back at your a collector, and then have these things all over the place. They're portable. They're 30 pounds. If it's a fixed facility, you could do that. We have a friend down in Denver who is thinking about heating his driveway for ice clearing. There's lots of things you can do if you can use that heat, but understand it is what's called low grade heat. You can't boil water with it. So that does limit you, but that does mean, like in a brewery or a distillery, you got to get that water up to boiling temperature. But while the boiling is a majority of it, you're still spending a lot of money getting it from 50 degree incoming to 190, 100, 200 degrees. Is it 193 here is where it boils? But yeah.
So since this is sort of an open presentation, and I know we have a lot of Wyoming miners in the crowd here, does anybody want to say anything about their experiences, challenges? Any questions?
I have a question.
Curtis.
I'll point at you being give you a chance to ask the panelists. Point out with something you referenced in the mining summit earlier, talking about wanting to educate your local utility companies. You also mentioned, hey, if we could pay them in Bitcoin, are you guys doing anything locally with real-time energy settlement, like with Stenoda or Satoshi Energy? Part of that real-time energy settlement comes a lot of education of utility. It's a good opportunity to educate.
I would love to. I think that is that would be. Let me get them running my machines before I start talking about real-time settlement. But I think that's a bigger nut. I would love to do that. I think that once we get buy-in that this is a good thing for them, I think that people will start realizing much more quickly. And because these companies are these utilities, except with the exception of the one or two big ones, they're very small. And so once they get their head around it, I think they can get their head around the rest of it much more quickly. But things like Sedona, real-time settlement, where we're just paying them by the minute, by the hour, whatever, that'd be great. I haven't even gone down that road because I'm still like, here's why we're good. We'll do curtailment. Give us a call. We'll turn it off tomorrow.
You're still in the dating phase.
Yeah. Anybody else want to touch that?
Let's say out loud. When I don't know anything about, I mean, I'd love to pay my utility. It's big work, but I'll wait to get it done.
Yeah, I think my utility only has like 8 people that work there, so I think that's. I'd have to teach them how to accept Bitcoin. So
yeah. So Chloe is it.
Education is where you started that, and I think we should talk a little bit about that, because that is one of the bigger challenges, and understanding the composition of the boards of these co-ops, and how Bitcoin may be foreign to them, and not that comfortable to them. I think educating, getting people comfortable is really the beginning of the process, and then paying in Bitcoin with real-time settlement. Again, that might expedite the education process, but it's really playing the long game, trying to get these people a little bit more comfortable with the asset class and with the sector.
Although I guess because they do, some of these utilities do view us as a risky business because of what's happened in the past, of people buying power for months and then just disappearing and not paying. I think the argument of why real-time settlement, if they can get their head around the tech and the how, the why will be very easy. Like, I'm paying you for the power I just used, so we're never bare. And if some of these utilities are demanding deposits, maybe we can talk about not having that deposit. Because I'd rather keep that in Bitcoin than in fiat sitting in a utility's bank account paying whatever.
I think we're about out of time. Are we getting closer?
Oh, I don't know.
yeah, I was gonna say.
Wasn't it?
Oh, yes.
It is high in the sky. I grew up in Gillette, and once I got into Bitcoin mining and kind of dived in to figure out what one really convened, has there ever been discussion? And my take is Cowboy County should be building power plants and literally not transmitting it anywhere, and you guys should just be buying them right outside.
I would love that. I think all of us would love that.
It's too obvious.
Well, I'll touch on something you just said with even getting them to accept Bitcoin as payment. Well, the next logical thing is they're going to hold some Bitcoin, and they have to save up for long-term capital investment projects. Well, if you saved up Bitcoin for 10 years, suddenly you're going to realize I should be taking all my payments in Bitcoin because my infrastructure is cheaper as we go further out.
But I guess exactly. And but to your point about Campbell County and basically not shipping any power anywhere, those of you who may have noticed at Cowboy State Daily 2 weeks ago mentioned that it wasn't the Campbell County plant, but it was the one in Wheatland where Tri-State is talking about decommissioning some or all of that plant. And that's a huge plant here in Wyoming, and that's a lot of jobs, and that's a lot of Wyoming coal. Bitcoin miners can keep that plant open, and keep those jobs there, and keep all that money here in Wyoming, and keep all that. Yeah.
Probably could have kept Kemmerer open.
Yeah. There you go. No. Campbell County is where Gillette is. I was talking about the plant that's in Wheatland. Yeah.
Speed decommissioned it.
Yeah, like took it. I do think, now we're probably out of time because I know that they want you're able to start on time.
Yeah. I'll just wrap up with one last little piece of sentiment here. I mean, I'm bullish on Bitcoin. I'm as bullish on home heating in Wyoming with Bitcoin. I think that people heating their houses in this state could be with some of the most resilient, like price-resistant and conditions-resistant hash in the world. Like, I think we could be some of the last hash rate to turn off. We might outlast these guys, So
you will. Home mining will outlast us because your cost is negative.
So consider it. If you're outside of town and you're heating with propane or electric, consider moving over to Bitcoin mining.
All right, if you get any questions, come talk to us after. We're happy to share our home heating experience.